Right. Just an intro. As I said, my name is Theo, and I work in the Student Learning Support Service. One of my key roles is actually to help students with their academic studies. I've been here in Flinders since 2011, so I've been doing this for quite a while. Right. I'm going to share my screen now so that you can have a look at the slides which I have prepared. And just give me a second. Okay. Right. Now, let's begin. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Ghana land and the land which was never ceded, and I pay my respects to the elders past and present. Right, this session, this short session, for about 1 hour, is going to offer you a few different components of studying. The first one is thinking, as in how do you think in university, which is kind of odd, but I'll explain a little bit more afterwards. The next one is reading, as in the reading skills which you need to learn and use in the university, followed by the writing skills which you need to use, and also referencing skills as well. Okay, so I will start with the thinking skills, and that's number one on the list because essentially that's the most important skill. Uh, we often have students who come to see us in the Student Learning Support Center, and they bring along their assignments, and then they get a C or maybe something which is less than a C, and they are really, really disturbed by that because they said they put in a lot of work, they did a lot of research, they read a lot of things, wrote a very long report, and they got a C, not a distinction, not a high distinction, and they ask why. They can't understand it because in the past, when they did an essay or assignment in schools, they used to have good marks. And the reason is actually this. In the university, we are going to move from reporting to thinking skills. And that's the difference between uni and school. All right. So while you were in school, you could have been doing a lot of reporting, as in you read a lot of stuff and then you write about what you have read. But in uni, that's not enough. Lecturers want to know what you think about something. That's more important. Okay, and this brings me to critical thinking skills. Critical thinking is basically the heart of any university study. Be it undergraduate first year, be it postgraduate, master's or PhD, even professors need to do this. So professors need to also do critical thinking. All right, and critical thinking is obviously something which is difficult. It can be nurtured, it can be taught, but it's something which you need to adopt all the time. Right, and this brings me to the area of academic arguments. So what is an academic argument? It doesn't mean that lecturers and students argue with each other all the time and people fight over things. It just simply means that we are actually always thinking about pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses, and other criticisms of whatever we read and work in. For example, if I have a question which says, as an assignment which says, higher education should be free for everyone, then you can actually take a stand, whether you agree with this, you disagree with this, or you can actually lean in between and argue your case out. Whatever you do, it's important that you have good reasons for it and you have evidence to support your claim. Which brings me to this. What is an argument at university? All right. So an academic argument in a university generally composed of two things. The first is a claim, and the second is the justification for the claim. And the justification is always supported by evidence. All right. Let me give you an example. Think of an academic argument, kind of like a court case. All right. So let's say you are the lawyer, you're defending a client, and the client is you're arguing that the client is innocent. All right. So in your academic argument, you're trying to argue that your client is innocent. And one of the claims, for example, which you have made is that your client couldn't have done this because your client is, say, for example, somewhere else when the crime happened. All right. So this is the justification. All right. And the evidence which you may produce could be something like, for example, a video recording of your client in a pub or something like that. So that's the evidence you use to support your justification and your claim, which will lead you to the academic argument. In the same way, if you were a science student studying computer science, for example, and you are given an assignment which says, what is the best network topology for a home office? All right. So that's the question, and your argument is that the star topology is the best topology. All right, then you make a claim. All right, the claim is that the star topology has the best speed, for example. You justify this by producing, say, for example, evidence from your readings that research has shown that this star topology has a speed which is like 20% faster than, say, a token ring approach or something like that. All right, so this is how you produce an argument at university. We do not argue without a claim and a justification, and most importantly, evidence to support whatever we say. All right. Now, what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the capacity to understand, evaluate, and analyze the work of important researchers. This means that when you are in the university, you need to read a lot. And I'll come to reading afterwards. Essentially, it's not just reading, but you need to understand what you read. Of course, all of us need to understand what we read. But more importantly, you need to evaluate and you need to analyze that work which you have read, and that's an important aspect of the university. All right. It also means that whatever ideas which you have developed from your reading, you need to be able to reason positively, and this is what makes a high distinction student different from a student who gets a credit all the time, right? So at the end of critical thinking, you need to create your own ideas, make your own claims, present strong arguments, acknowledge the debates which have been going on in a particular field, acknowledge the limitations of research which we have read, and also, most importantly, contribute to that knowledge. Now, this is important, especially if you're doing postgraduate studies. I don't know how many of you will be doing postgraduate studies, but in the area of, for example, PhD, one of the most important element of a PhD is that you must have a significant novel contribution to the knowledge at the end of the day. So this is why critical thinking is important. To learn more about critical thinking, what you can do is you can go to this particular link over here, and I'll pause this for half a minute or so that you can do a screen capture or take your mobile phone and snap a photo of this. All right, this contains the link to the flow site, and it has, for example, you can see over here a list of videos you can watch for critical thinking, and a list of PDFs, which will allow you to read more and understand more about critical thinking. I'm going to give you a few seconds to do a snapshot, a screen capture, screen grab, or just take a photo from your mobile phone. This will help you in the future. And while I'm giving you time to do this, can I ask that those of you who have turned on your microphones, mute your microphones, because others will be able to hear you coughing and knocking on tables and so on. Right? Okay, let me move on. Reading skills at university. Now, I'm sure all of you know how to read, all right? And this is not a skill which is new to you. But in the university, one of the problems is this. There is a ton of stuff to read. And you will very quickly find that there will be so much reading that you will fall behind on your reading if you're not careful. So there are a few strategies for you to help with reading in the university. All right, and let me start by going through some of the common reading problems students have in the university. The first is this: a lot of students find that they read too slowly, like a snail, for example. All right. I used to have a college friend who used to read very slowly. And one of the reasons is because he used to have a highlighter and highlight everything on his textbook when he's reading. And at the end of the day, he doesn't have time to go through whatever he has highlighted because he just spends too much time doing that. All right. So this is one of the problems, reading too slowly. The other is that a lot of people love to read for pleasure. Like when you read novels, when you read storybooks, it's fun. So you can read very quickly. You can finish a whole novel in say one day. But when it comes to academic books, that's another story altogether. Most people find that they can't even finish 4 pages in a day. So that's something to consider as well. The other problem is this: a lot of people read academic papers, academic books, and it takes them a while to start and it takes them a while to end. But the problem is by the time they have read the last page, they have forgotten what they have read on the first page. So this is a problem to deal with as well, because usually when it comes to academic text, there's a lot of thinking which needs to go on to understand what has been written. And lastly, there are people who need to read everything 5 times or more in order to comprehend what they have read and also to remember what they have read. And this is actually something to do with comprehension skills and also memory skills as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few tips to help you in the university for reading. Okay, and the first one is active reading. With active reading, you start by thinking about what you already know. Researchers call this the schema or schemata theory. All right. So what is a schemata? All right. Your brain from the day you were born, you develop knowledge from about what you see, what you hear, and what you read. So this knowledge is kept in your brain, be it a small little schema about something or a large schema. For example, if I use the word elephant, all right, if I mention the word elephant, I'm sure that all of you have a mental picture in your brain right now about an elephant. Some of you have an image of an elephant with big ears and long trunk and perhaps small beady eyes. Some of you have a mental image of an elephant which is huge, the whole body, perhaps somewhere in a river or something like that. That's your schema about a knowledge. So when you have an assignment, the first thing you do is you think about what you already know and you build your knowledge based on what you already know. The next thing is this: read with a purpose. Now, in the university, very few of us read for fun, all right? And most of the time when we read, there is a specific purpose for reading. So find out the purpose of your reading, be it for an assignment or for your thesis or for your research and so on and so forth. So it's important to know your purpose of reading because that helps you to determine the strategy which you want to use when you read. Lastly, if you have achieved any milestones for your reading, make sure you reward yourself. Close the book, close whatever you have read, go for a walk, get an ice cream, or just enjoy a movie after that, right? Now, in the university, we generally recommend this strategy called the 5-point reading plan. It starts with predicting and it goes on to skimming, scanning, analyze, and note taking. Now, let me explain what predicting is. Predicting is using your previous knowledge, which I've explained to you just now. You build on that previous knowledge. So go back to what you already understand about a particular topic. Skimming is a strategy when you skim through a book very quickly. The idea is just to get the overall general knowledge about that particular piece of writing. Scanning is when you search for a particular word. So, for example, if I ask you what's the definition of, say, bulgogi, for example, and you search the text for the word bulgogi, so your eyes are actually searching for one particular word. All right. Analyze is when you analyze the text in depth, which usually requires a longer time because you want to analyze how processes work, you want to analyze how arguments were constructed, and so on and so forth. And lastly, as odd as it sounds, reading also involves note taking. All right. And this is something which a lot of students don't do, which they should be doing. So if you are in the university and if you are reading, theoretically, if you are a right-hander like me, then your book should be on the left-hand side and your writing instrument and writing materials should be on your right-hand side. Because as you read, you must take notes. If you don't take notes, number one, you don't remember what you have read. Number two, you don't organize your ideas well. And number three, you don't have your referencing materials at all. So remember that when you read, you should be writing notes as well. That's very, very important to do. Okay, now here are a list of questions for critical thinking when you read. And this is just questions which you should be asking yourself as you are reading something. So I'm just going to read a few of the questions. So when you read, ask yourself some of these questions. What do you expect the text to be about? Again, this comes back to your early knowledge or your schema about previous knowledge. How do you think it will relate to your previous reading or knowledge? What is the aim of the author? What is the message the author is trying to send? What issues, what philosophies, what ideas, what theories influence the author? What were the perspectives, the angles that the authors looked at? What were the main arguments? What arguments were supported by evidence? Were the evidence reliable? And so on and so forth. So I'm going to stop for a while so that you can do a screen capture and take a photograph of this, because this is really useful for you to think about whenever you read. And this is going to change the way you see things. For example, I used to be a person who loved to read novels. So I could finish a novel in a day very easily, a thick book. And that was because it was to read. But when I came to university and I studied literature, every time I read a novel, my brains start to think about different things, like how was the plot maturing, where was the climax of the plot, how were the characters, were the characters three-dimensional, were they two-dimensional, and so on and so forth. So the way I read starts to become very different because my head is also thinking about a lot of things at the same time as I read. And this is what you should be doing in the university to help you become a better student. Right, now we are going to move on. This is the slide which shows you where to find resources about reading at university. Again, this is the series, these are the videos over here, and these are the PDFs which you can use. And this is the link which you can use to access all these materials for reading. I'm going to pause again for a short while so that you can do a screen capture or take a photograph of this particular slide. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can pop it in the chat and Mel can ask your question on your behalf. Okay, let me move on to writing at university. Writing at the university, of course, is a very important aspect. Writing is actually producing an output for your lecturers. And that output, that writing, allows you to demonstrate your critical thinking skills as well as the academic reading skills, both of which I have talked about previously. There are many different forms of writing in the university. For example, if you are in the sciences, you could be writing lab reports, you could be writing journal articles if you're a postgraduate student. And if you're a nursing student, you could be doing a case study, or if you are, say, a social work student, you could be doing a reflection, or you could be doing a general essay. These are all different genres of writing, but the core elements of writing assignment, they are fairly consistent and similar, regardless of the type of writing materials which you use. So the writing process which we recommend are these steps. Number one, analyzing. You should analyze your work very, very carefully. You should scope and brainstorm for materials to use for your writing. You should plan your writing, and then, of course, go to the writing stage. And before you submit your writing, hit the submit button, you should do editing and proofreading. And we'll go through this one by one as well. Okay, now let's start with this particular assignment. This is a genuine assignment. This is an authentic assignment from Nursing 2003, meant for nurses. I'm going to give you a second to read the assignment. I know that not all of you are going to be nurses, but this is going to be the basis of our discussion for this slide. Okay, you can see that this assignment has asked for two risk factors for CVA, and I don't know what CVA is, but that's not important at this point. You just need to know that this is the topic of your assignment. All right, and for every single of these risk factor, you need to explain how and why they increase the risk and lead to CVA. Plus, you need to select two different signs and symptoms for CVA, and for each sign and symptom, explain how and why it can occur. So what I usually recommend students to do when they start an assignment is this. First, look at the assignment question very carefully and consider these few aspects. Number one, examine the topic, identify the topic. What is the topic? The topic here is CVA. Then I usually advise students to do a mind map. Start by drawing CVA smack in the middle of your paper or your notes, right? So once you have identified the topic, look at the important words here. What are the important words? In this particular case, in this assignment, there are two different important aspects. One is risk factor, and the other is signs and symptoms. So you can draw risk factors over here, signs and symptoms over here. All right. And remember that for every risk factor, you need to introduce two different risk factors. So you have risk factor 1 and risk factor 2, and then signs and symptoms 1 and signs and symptoms 2. Then look at the keywords. What are the keywords which you need to produce? These are the keywords which you need to produce. Okay, for every risk factor, how they increase CVA or how they lead to CVA. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. And then for every sign and symptoms, the why from a pathophysiological perspective and how from a pathophysiological perspective. So now you can see that I have actually built a mind map. This is called a mind map, all right, of the requirements or the purpose of that assignment. And when you know how to build a mind map, this mind map can become kind of like your guide or your roadmap for you to build your assignment. So once you start reading, what you can do is you can make sure that you can find the answers which you need for your assignments using this mind map. Okay? Now, let's start with analyzing. All right, what is analyzing? The analyzing is making sure you know how to respond to the task which you have been set, and we have done that. Okay, part of it at least. Then what you need to do is to break down the task into various components to make sure that everything works together as a whole. And this is important because you want to see that everything comes together as one big assignment instead of separate chunks which are distinct from each other. And you will see that the mind map which I've introduced to you helps you to do that. Now, the next thing you need to do is scoping or brainstorming, all right? And when I use the term scoping and brainstorming, what I mean is actually the research process. Now, the word research can be a bit misleading. Often when people see the word research, they think about, well, scientists in a laboratory and so on. But students do research too. You need to do research in the university because you need to find the materials which will become the evidence to support your arguments. So where do you start the research process? Usually, we encourage students to use the broad to complex approach. And the broad to complex approach starts by looking at general scoping searches. So where do you find things generally? If I say, all right, if I have an assignment question for you, and the assignment question says this, find out the best ways for your cat to sleep. All right. So it's a simple question. Find the best positions for your cat to sleep. All right. So what can you do? All right. Most people, I mean, unless you have a cat yourself, most people would do this. You will go to Google and you will start searching Google first. All right. Now Google is okay to start off with because it gives you a lot of very broad knowledge. And this is what I mean when I say broad knowledge. But Google is not going to be something which you want to cite in your assignment because the Google results tend to be very, very general. More importantly, Google results are often unverified. All right, so you want to start at Google because you want to have a general idea. What I like to do is I like to go to YouTube. So if I have a question, an assignment topic, I will go to YouTube and I'll start to watch videos relating to that. That gives me some knowledge. And this goes back to what I've spoken just now about reading, building your base knowledge first. Go back to your what you already know and start to build on that. So going to Google first, going to YouTube first, but not citing that because that's too general and not specific enough, not verified information. Okay, then you might move on to the resources or readings which you have been given. So your lecturer most likely has given you a reading list. Okay, so this is when you start to go through your reading list in the university. And the reading list will give you slightly more precise papers or materials for you to read, which are slightly of better quality. Not slightly, but actually much more better quality than what you see in YouTube and Google searches. Now, of course, the problem is this: everyone in your class has been given a set of reading resources, so you need to find more than that in order to be more detailed. And this means that you will need to actually go and find information from your databases, from your library, and so on and so forth. So one of the first few things which you should be doing as a student during your tutorials is have a chat with your tutor after the class, after the tutorial, and say, look, I'm interested to learn how to find more information for my assignment. What electronic databases should I be using for my studies? All right. Now, your tutor will be able to recommend you a list of databases which are suitable for your discipline. So every discipline has their own sort of preferred databases. There are like hundreds of databases, all of which has a whole big repository of journal articles and so on. So your lecturer or your tutor will be able to tell you what exactly you should be going to. For example, in my field of study, which is computer science, I generally use, for example, the ACS or the IEEE and so on and so forth. I know it sounds like I'm throwing a lot of acronyms around, but these are acronyms which you need to know in the university for your particular field. So in the same way, if you're a nursing student, you need to find out what kind of databases are used for nursing. And if you're a medical student, you need to know what databases are used for medicine. Similarly, for education, for social work, and humanities, and so on and so forth. Get a feel for the broader topic and the conversation around it, and then move to the more complex materials. So if I go back to my diagram at the bottom, start by talking or going broad to find your literature, build a base knowledge, then look at the literature which you have been given, the reading list which have been given by your lecturer, and then go to databases, look for more materials which you can use for your assignment. Okay, now we go to the planning stage, and this is the most important part of the process. Why is this the most important part? Because if this goes wrong, your whole assignment will derail. All right, so it's important to plan very, very carefully. And a good plan helps you to also focus your research and your readings because you know exactly what you should be researching and you know exactly what you should be reading. Plus, it focuses your writing as well to make sure that you do not deviate from the original assignment and the rubrics as well. Then, of course, for planning, all of us have different styles when it comes to planning. I like to use mind map. I've shown you an example of how mind maps can be constructed. Some people prefer to use, say, for example, bullet points. All right, it depends on you and your own preferences. Whatever works best for you. Now, for writing, and writing is surprisingly actually the easy part. When you write, make sure that you use formal but simple language. More importantly, your goal should be easy to understand. All right. So formal language, which means that remember that you are writing for an audience which comprise of your lecturers and tutors. You are not writing your essay for a friend, all right, or a relative, which means that whatever you write has to be in very formal language. At the same time, the language shouldn't be too complex. a lot of students misunderstand and think that the more complex your sentences are, the more bombastic your words are, the better grades you will score, which is actually the opposite. Lecturers are human beings just like you and me, and they like to read something which they can understand easily. What's more important for them is actually the content, not the actual writing. Now, when you write, think about the language aspects which help you to demonstrate your logic and argument. For example, use discourse markers, words like however, therefore, as a result. These are all discourse markers. In the same way, you might want to use reporting verbs, words like Smith claims, Hussein establishes. When you use reporting verbs, take note of the referencing style which you are supposed to use. For example, if you have been asked to use APA, which I will explain more in the next few slides, APA generally proposes that you use past tense for your reporting verbs. So instead of Smith claims, you'll be Smith claimed with an ED and Hussein established with an ED. Whereas for Harvard referencing, Harvard recommends that you use the present tense. So that's why you can see here, Smith claims, Hussein establishes. The next thing is the use of the word I or we, personal pronouns. For personal pronouns, you can only use personal pronouns, or you are encouraged to use personal pronouns when it comes to reflective writing, as in like when you write reflections about your experiences and so on, but not in other forms or genres of writing. So that's very important to take note of. All right, so avoid using I or we when it comes to case studies, for your reports and so on and so forth. Only use it for your reflections. Okay, now let's say you have written your essay, you're very happy that you have done your work. Before you submit your work, you must make sure that you edit and proofread. And this is important because you may or may not realize this, but in the process of writing or typing your essays, what would happen is that there are many mistakes which you have made. Sometimes it's just an issue of writing something and then going back, changing content a little bit here and there, which makes all your sentences go haywire. You may not notice it at that time, but you will notice it if you read it again. All right. So editing, what is editing? Editing is at a macro level. It deals with the content. In other words, editing is important to determine the content's accuracy and clarity. So whatever you're writing about, for example, if you're writing about a certain specific theory, say Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then you want to make sure that whatever you've written, the content is accurate and clear. Whereas proofreading is at a micro level. Proofreading deals with the mechanics of the language, things like spelling, punctuation, grammar, formatting, and so on and so forth. You want to make sure that that's correct as well. It is important for you to learn how to do editing and proofreading because a lot of students lose marks for this. And they only learn about this when the marks are released and they get feedback from the lecturers, and then they say, I know how to do this, or I know how to deal with this, but you didn't. That's the whole point. All right. So there's a video which is here at the very bottom, which we have created to teach you how to edit and proofread. You can take a photo of the link here, or you can do a screen capture so that you can go back to watch this video later in your assignment. Okay. Right. Now, I will go through referencing skills at the university. Before that, this is the flow site, which contains a lot of information about how to write, starting from writing the right way, an introduction, how to kickstart, how to analyze the task. We talk about analyzing the task a little bit, how to plan, how to outline and plan, and the types of assignments, and how to write introductions, and so on and so forth. I'll give you a few seconds to do a screen capture and also to take a photograph here. Oh, by the way, there's a QR code here. If you want to, you can use your phone to capture the QR code and go straight to the page, and then you can bookmark the page as well. Okay. Right. Okay. Now, referencing skills at the uni, all right? So referencing skills has to do with integrity, all right? Integrity is one of the university's 4 core values. And what is integrity? Integrity has to do with honesty, respect, trust, and fairness. It's important that you maintain academic integrity whenever you produce a piece of work and whenever you do your research and so on and so forth, because this shows that you are an honest person who knows how to do your work in the right way. So integrity has to do with referencing, and let's explore why we need to reference first. All right, we need to reference to acknowledge the work of other people. All right, to make sure that the work of other people are basically given the credit which they have because they have done the original work. We need to reference because we want our readers to be able to access the same resources which we have used in our writing. We need to reference so that we can show that your lecturer that you have conducted a thorough and balanced kind of research, and then you have covered every single aspect that you can think of. And of course, you reference because you want to maintain academic integrity. Okay. Now, when do we reference? And this is a very interesting notion, because a lot of students who come to the university, they misunderstand and think that they only need to reference if they have an if they have actually used the exact words from the source. All right. And while that is generally true, you need to reference even when you use an idea from the original source, not necessarily the exact words. Even if the idea came from somewhere, that idea needs to be referenced as well. Okay. And the way to reference is basically to paraphrase or to summarize or to quote directly. All right. It's important to remember this, and I stress this. You reference ideas. Okay. Now, uh, what referencing styles do we use in Flinders University? There are many different styles which we use in the university. Here are a few which are more popularly used around the different campuses and different disciplines, different colleges. The one which arguably is most popular is the APA 7th, all right? APA stands for the American Psychological Association. While it's designed by the American Psychological Association, it's actually used by many other disciplines as well. And then you have the Harvard AGPS 6. AGPS stands for the Australian Government Publishing Style. The Harvard AGPS 6 is starting to become a bit obsolete these days. Fewer and fewer people are using this around the university. Then we have the MLA, which is used predominantly by people in the creative English areas. The note system, which is used by archaeology and other fields. What is important is that you must check with your topic coordinator and find out exactly what referencing style or system you should be using. And once you find out which referencing style you should be using, then find the study guide which shows you how to reference correctly. Now, we in the Student Learning Support Service have prepared a few different guides for you to use. Here are 2 of the guides. One is Harvard referencing, one is APA referencing. You can find the guides, you can download the guides, they are in PDF format from this link over here. Again, I'll give you a few seconds to grab an image of that particular source. Okay, now if you reference a lot, all right, and if you know the basics of referencing, then what you can do is you can use a software called Endnote, which can help you to reference automatically. Endnote is a referencing software, and most important of all, it's free for all students and staff, which means that you can download and install it on your computer for free. To learn how to use Endnote, you can join the sessions on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Tuesdays 1 to 2, Wednesdays 11 to 12, from week 3 onwards. They are done in the Commons at the Central Library, level 2, or via a Teams web link. If you are a postgraduate student who is doing a PhD or master's by research, or if you're a staff, you can register using this link for advanced training. Right. Now, in this particular slide, in this particular video, I'm going to show you how Endnote can be used very, very quickly. All right, so this is Microsoft Word. I'm typing a sentence right now. Okay, so what I can do now is I can go back and find a place which I want to insert a citation. Then I switch to Endnote. This is the Endnote software. I pick a reference which I want to cite. So let's say I am going to use this one by Fornell, and then I'm going to click the button to cite it, and pop, it goes into my Microsoft Word in APA style. All right, then I can now write reference list. All right, sorry, very bad typing skills. Okay, so now let's say I'm going to pop something else inside. So again, I'm going to put my cursor to the same spot, search for the reference. In this case, I'm going to use a liner and then pop the insert to insert the citation in. So now you have two, Fornell and liner. All right. So that's how you use Endnote. Very useful software. Make sure that you find time to learn how to use this. Okay. Right. Again, this is a screenshot of where you can find information about Endnote. If you want, you can take a quick screen grab of this image, or you can take a photo of this. Similarly, to learn how to reference, this is the flow site for you to go to, and this flow site contains videos about academic integrity, referencing fundamentals, how to reference, the structure and the style, a short introduction to Endnote, and how to use the APA guide which we have suggested. I'll give you a few seconds to capture this as well. Okay, now we have covered all the 4 skills. Are there any other skills which I have missed? Yes, there are actually. There are a few different skills which you need as well in the university. And this is the question which a lot of students ask me, do I need maths in the university? Many students are terrified of maths, and they think that the moment they come to the university, yay, I don't need to study maths anymore because I'm studying nursing or I'm doing something else. The thing is this, maths is something which is used around different disciplines. For example, if you're a nursing student, you may need to learn how to do drug calculation, which requires the use of maths. In the same way, if you are studying psychology, you may need to learn maths in order to do statistical analysis. If you are a student who is studying education, you will require maths to pass land tight. So maths is used in all disciplines throughout the university as well, or at least in most different disciplines. So here's an example of how a maths question can be designed for nursing. All right, and I know that not all students here are nursing students, so I'll just go through this very quickly. So in this particular case, the student is asked to actually calculate the drip rate for an IV dispenser. So this is what we normally advise students to do. We ask students to visualize the question and then do the maths calculations and so on and so forth. So if you need maths, don't panic, all right? Don't panic, because we also have created quite a lot of maths resources on our flow site. And this is where you can get resources about mathematics if you need to use maths in the university. Right. The next thing is this. Where do you find support if you are stuck? If you have a problem in your assignment, if you have something which you don't understand. So there are a few different ways you can find support. One is the study guides which we have created, and I've shown you quite a few of these just now. And I've asked you whether you can screen capture the information or photograph the information. The other, of course, is the student learning support flow sites, which the guides are actually located. Now, you can also come to the Learning Lounge, which is located at the Commons Level 2 Central Library, Bedford Park, where we have our advisors who can talk to you and help you out with your academic problems. Similarly, there is a service called Studiosity, which is a 24/7 student academic services support. There are two different types of support provided by Studiosity. One is an assignment feedback, which means that you submit your work in Microsoft Word to Studiosity, and someone will give you the feedback within 24 hours, so that then you can improve on your work. The other is a live chat service where you can talk to someone, or you can use the chat services depending on which your preference is, and discuss potential problems you have in your study. All right, and this is the link which you can use to access Studiosity. My advice is for you to actually sign up for the services as soon as possible. If possible, right after my talk today, sign up for the service. You don't have to use it immediately, but at least you know it's there and available for you. Now, on the bottom right-hand side of my screen, I have a link to a Studiosity assignment calculator. Now, when you get your assignment questions, the first thing you do is use the assignment calculator, key in the title of the assignment, key in the start date and the final date, and this software or this application will actually show you, break down the different tasks you need to do, plus the deadlines where you need to to complete that particular task. It's helpful because it helps you to manage your time well. And time management is also another skill which you need to master in the university, right? That's it for my talk today. I have about 10 minutes left and I'm open for questions if you have any. Do you have any questions? If you are shy, you can actually pop it on the chat service. Grammarly. Grammarly is a software which is useful. I do encourage students to use it, although the university does not subscribe to it. Just be very careful that when you use Grammarly, make sure that you understand why some of the mistakes which have been pointed out by Grammarly is there. Learn from the mistakes so that you don't continue to make the mistakes. That's very important to do. Now, can you ask your question? You need to turn on your microphone to ask the question. These slides.
Excuse me, sir. I missed the first part of your video session, so I would like to know where can I download your video?
All right. This video is now being recorded right now. All right. So what you can do later is you can actually watch the recording again by going through the same link which you used to join this site. And then if you go to your top left hand corner, all right, you should be able to see a link which says recordings. That allows you to actually have the access to the recording of the whole lecture series. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Amy. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can.
Yeah. Hi. Actually, I am trying to use a Studiosity,
Yep.
and then they say I need a PIN number, 4-digit PIN number. So how can I get the PIN number?
Okay, my understanding is that when when you sign up to use Studiosity, it will send you the PIN number through email.
To
So
my
you might
email.
want to check your Flinders email address when you sign in.
Oh, I see. Okay. Then when I got the PIN number, then I can use the Studiosity freely, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. No worries. Anyone else? I am not sure if all the orientation videos are online and recorded, but the ones which we have organized in the Student Learning Support Service, which is this video, and the one which is coming later today on assignments, understanding assignments and grades, and the one which is on Wednesday, which is on balancing uni and life. Those are going to be recorded, and you can have access to them. Right.
So yeah, we'll put them on our flow page and maybe anyone can drop in and see us anytime in the Learning Lounge as well, which opens from next week. So if you're based on Bedford Park campus, the Learning Lounge is just in the Central Library here. So if not, we've got Studio City, as you mentioned, online. So
if you have watched last year's Balancing Uni and Life, the content I think will generally be the same, as although the presenter this time round is different. So I don't know if the presenter is actually going to do an upgrade of the content. Right. Okay, if there are no more questions, then I thank you for your time, and I hope that you actually learned something today from today's session. Right? Okay, and I'm going to leave the chat open just so that Mel can answer some of the questions which are available here. Right? Okay. All the best to all of you. Enjoy your time at Flinders, and welcome.